Hey guys, this is Shabear's Media Room here, and well, since I shared with you all my top 10 favorite movies of 2022 nearly a week ago, well, a least favorite list is bound to happen. So, today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 least favorite movies from last year. Now, like I said in the last top 10 list, I did see a lot of movies last year, and of course not all of them were good. There were a fair amount that I did not really like, and those movies that I did not like will be on this list, or at least the ones that I really didn't like, that I did not like, that were bad enough to get to my top 10. So yeah, but without further ado, here are my top 10 least favorite movies from last year. Number 10 is gonna go to Uncharted. Now, to be fair, I never played the Uncharted games, so maybe I'm not the one to judge for this movie, but I don't know. I just did not have a really good time with this movie. I mean, I will admit the action I do think is very enjoyable. There are some pretty charming jokes here and there. I think visually it's also really well done, and the performances are good too. Like from Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. But to be honest, I kind of just thought it was just generic. I mean, the story was weak. Yeah, the characters are generic and really not that interesting, in my opinion. The writing, not very good. And overall, I just didn't really have that good of a time with this movie. I mean, despite me never playing the Uncharted games, it did look good from the promotional material, but unfortunately that just was not the case, and yeah, I just did not really have a good time with this movie. It wasn't horrible, but it's a movie that I don't plan on rewatching ever again. Number 9 is gonna go to Cheaper by the Dozen, the 2022 remake. Now, just to be clear, I never saw the original Cheaper by the Dozen. I have definitely heard of it, and I do know what it's primarily about, but I just never saw it. Although, from what I understand, you don't really need to watch the original to understand this remake. I mean, it's kind of the point of a remake, but yeah, I was not really looking forward to this movie all that much, because from the emotional material, it did not really look all that good. And well, that's what I got. Now, there are some pros to this movie, such as maybe the charming jokes here and there. Some characters are quite charming, I must say. I did actually enjoy some of the characters, surprisingly. But the movie just suffers from stale humor, terrible writing, not really not very strong story, and overall it's just nothing special, to be honest. Like Uncharted, it's not a bad movie. It's not like a horror movie. It's not like a horrible movie per se, but it's a movie that I don't plan on rewatching ever again, just like Uncharted. So yeah. However, I will say though that for that for a Disney remake of a 20th Century Fox property, this was way better. This was definitely better than a certain other Disney remake of a 20th Century property. And I think you all know what that is. But anyways, yeah, Cheaper by the Dozen, nothing special. Number 8 is gonna go to Pinocchio, the 2022 Disney remake. Alright, now call me crazy and shock incoming, but I have actually never seen the original Pinocchio. Just never saw it. But of course I knew what the original was about, so it's not like I was going into this movie like completely blind, but in a way I was going into blind since I never saw the original. I know the original is supposed to be a classic, so I will definitely check the original out soon. But I mean, to be fair, I haven't really seen many Disney live action remakes. I know that they're not very good, at least a lot of them. Some of them I think are actually kind of well received from some people, but most, if not, like most of them are not very received well. And yeah, this movie was just this movie just suffers from bad CGI and animated characters that don't really have much to do. Like Tom Hanks, I will say Tom Hanks does deliver a very solid performance as Geppetto, but I mean, he himself doesn't really get much to do. So his character is kind of wasted in my opinion. Also, the story is just all over the place, and overall, just the movie is just really boring overall, especially in the first half hour. And then from after that, it just goes all over the place, and I really don't like it when movies have a story that's just all over the place. That's when it just indicates that it becomes really overwhelming. And yeah. So for pretty much my first of these live action Disney remakes, it wasn't very good. Number 7 is gonna go to the 355. Now, this was just not a very good action movie. I will say the action is definitely really good. I think the performances are also really good too, and I do think the cinematography actually is pretty well done as well. But overall, the movie is just really boring. Like, the story is just really boring. Like, to be honest, like, I almost fell asleep while watching this movie. It was just really boring. And I did not care for the characters. They really just were very, very boring and interesting. The writing, like, I mean, I know I said the cinematography was pretty well done, but some of the writing kept me kind of just, like, not very good. And it's just not a very good action movie. To be honest, I don't really have much to say about this movie, but it's just a really weak action movie. Like, I just really did not have a good time with this movie. It's just really not a good action movie. And this was not a good start to movies from last year, because this is the first movie from okay, this wasn't the first movie that I watched last year, but like the first movie that came out last year that I watched, and was not a good start. Number 6 is gonna go to The Gray Man. Now, I was actually kind of looking forward to this movie. I mean, it did look like it could be a solid action flick, and it did have an all-star cast of Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, and Anya de Armas. But just was not that. Like the 355, it was just overall a really boring action movie. The story story is really slow, and there are so many time jumps in the movie too. Like, I don't exactly remember the order of the time jumps, but like there were way, way too many time jumps in the movie. Like more than a movie should have. Characters were boring. Like Studio 55, did not care for the characters. And the movie honestly feels way longer than it actually is. The movie's like 2 hours and 9 minutes, but it feels like it's almost 3 hours. Like, I literally kept checking how much time I had left in the movie, and I was just shocked each time at just how slow this movie's pacing is. Like, it really just... Ugh. But I will say the action is very fun. I did feel bad for a certain character. I did feel bad for, like, the little girl character. I don't really remember her name, but, like, what happened to her father, I did kind of feel bad for her because she didn't really deserve that to happen to her father. And I do think the performances are also good, too. But overall, it's just yet another really boring action flick. Number 5 is going to go to Firestarter, the 2022 remake. Now, I was actually, to be honest, I actually was kind of excited for this movie because, I mean, from the premise, it did seem like it could be a genuinely good horror flick, but this was not the case. First of all, the pacing is just really slow. The characters are boring. And the ending was really, really dumb. I really did not like the ending. I won't spoil the ending, but it's just really dumb in my opinion. I really did not like the ending. I will say though, like some of the visuals are actually pretty cool, I will say. I do think the performances are good too. And the story is alright, I guess. I mean, like, yeah, I know I said before that from, like, the premise of it, it seemed like it would be a genuinely good horror flick, but the story just turned out to be, like, alright, I guess, but kind of a letdown, like, because I was kind of expecting it to be better, but yeah. But I really did not care for this movie, and I never saw the original Firestarter from 1984. I don't know how the movie would turn out. I don't really know how it was received by critics, but this movie was, but, you know, because I saw this movie, the original, and I don't really have that high hopes for the original after this remake, but, you know, maybe it could actually surprise me, but for this one, it really just did not. Number 4 is going to go to Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Roderick Rules, 2022. Now, the first animated Wimpy Kid movie from last year I thought was mediocre. It was disappointing. I was expecting it to be better, but I just didn't really care for it that much. So I really wasn't looking forward to the sequel, and the sequel turned out to be worse than the first movie. Story is just weak. The writing is awful. Characters are boring, and they don't capture the charm that they had in the 2011 Roderick Rules movie. And most of the animation, for the most part, the animation is just really not that good. And I will say that I guess at some points the animation can be alright, I guess, and and I do like I just do like the style of the movie, like the backgrounds, like I think they're nice, but I just did not really have a good time. I really did not have a good time with the sequel. This turned out to be worse than the first movie, and and apparently we're getting an animated Last Straw later this year, probably by the end of the year. So I guess we're just gonna get more animated Wimpy Kid movies, which, judging by how the first two went, not looking forward to the animated Last Straw. Number 3 is gonna go to Halloween Ends. Now, the original Halloween is a classic. It's my second favorite horror movie of all time behind the original Scream movie. And I did really enjoy the 2018 remake. Halloween Kills was honestly disappointing. I wanted to like that movie, but I just didn't. It was a disappointing sequel. And so, to be honest, I still went into this movie with a little bit of hope that it could be good, but no, it really, just no. This was just terrible. Like, first of all, the story just did not make any sense. It's awful. Michael Myers is barely in it. He's in it for like about 10 minutes, and then the rest of the movie focuses on Corey, who's such a boring character in my opinion. Like if I'm watching a Halloween movie, I'm expecting there to be a lot of Michael Myers. Like not some not some random character that was probably thrown in at the last minute to make a shitty twist villain. Yeah, sure, I didn't like Halloween Kills, but I can at least consider that a Halloween movie because Michael Myers was heavily in it. But this one just, it just doesn't even feel like a Halloween movie because Michael Myers is barely even in this movie. And most movie just focuses on Corey, just such a boring freaking twist villain in my opinion. God. And I just really, really did not like this movie. This is definitely the worst horror movie of 2022, in my opinion. I really, really did not like this movie. Number 2 is gonna go to The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. Now, the first two Ice Age I do like the first two Ice Age movies. Third movie was okay. Fourth one was mediocre. I wasn't a fan of the fifth one. And now we have the 6th Ice Age movie. And this is easily the worst in the Ice Age franchise. First off, the animation is terrible. It is a major downgrade from the previous movie's animation. The characters that they introduce are just stupid. The characters, I don't care for the characters. They're annoying, they're not enjoyable. I do not care for the characters in this movie. And of course, they have to have Crash and Eddie be the main characters when I really did not like their characters in the other Ice Age movies. Because they were just really annoying. They're essentially as Animat Reviews put it best, they're essentially the kids' version of Jackass, who attempt just incredibly dumb stunts that no one would attempt, and they're really annoying in this, and the story is awful, the writing is awful, the humor is awful. This movie in general is just really, really awful. My only pro with this movie is that the voice acting is decent, I guess. I mean, most of the main cast did not return. The only original actor that returned is Simon Pegg, who plays Buck. And yeah, this is definitely the worst of the Ice Age movies. However, it's not quite the worst. It's not quite the worst movie of 2022, as there is one other movie that I think is slightly worse than this movie. And that movie is Marmaduke 2022. Where do we even begin with this atrocity? This is not only my least favorite movie of 2020, but this is easily one of the worst movies I have ever seen in my life. And I'm not even joking when I say that. This is seriously an atrocity of a movie. First off, the animation in this movie is god awful. It literally makes Buck Wild's animation look glorious compared to the shit animation. The characters are annoying. They are not funny. They are incredibly bland. They're just nothing. I don't care for the characters. They're just nothing. The story is awful. The writing is awful. The humor is awful. The voice acting is not very good, to be honest. It just does not seem like the actors even want to be there. Like, you just don't really try, to be honest. And this movie is just such an atrocity. Literally, my only pro with this movie is that there's one scene where, like, Marmaduke runs away from his family and he's, like, running in the rain. And the music that played during that scene I thought was decent, I guess. But that's about the only pro I have for this movie. Everything else about this movie is a freaking atrocity. I really hated this movie. Like, I knew I was gonna hate this movie, but like, oh my god. Like, to be honest, I do not recommend watching this movie. Like, even if you want to watch it for opinion purposes, it is just, oh my god, it is just an atrocity. Like I said before, this is not only my least favorite movie of 2022, but this is literally one of the worst movies I have ever seen in my life. Just what an atrocity of a movie. And that about does it for my top 10 least favorite movies of 2022. There were definitely some really off ones, and there were some that, weren't really awful or horrible per se, but are movies that I don't really care for and don't really ever plan to rewatch ever again. So, yeah. Well, that about does it for this top 10 list. So thank you guys for watching, and this is Shaver's Media Room signing off.